Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to our next Planwell Meetwell Video Series, continuing through the 8 phases of the guest journey. My name is Yurii, and I'm here with my colleague, Susan Bennett. And today we're going to do a deeper dive in sharing some insights, thoughts, best practices, and tools as you approach the phase 3 and 4, anticipating and arriving, as you redesign your event and build trust. It's important to remember that every part of the guest journey is really an expression and purpose and value that you want to make sure that you're creating lasting relationships and engagement between you, your guests, and your brand. So let's dive in. So Susan, wouldn't you say the anticipating phase is very important, both in the face-to-face and digital, because it's important for our organizers to set right expectations and build excitement. Otherwise, nobody's going to come to the event.
That's right, Yurii. Experiences are memorable events. Setting the right expectations and building excitement can help guide that experience and make it a memorable one.
Exactly. So once your guests have decided they want to come to the event, registered, they start building this excitement in their mind at what the experience is going to look like. I know when I start reading up on an event, I want to know what's going on and understand what my ROI is going to be. And as we know right now, there's a lot of discussion around the hybrid event, how the hybrid event can work. So I know event organizers are really trying to get a handle on which of their guests are going to be attending the in-person or online event, understanding those guidelines and city protocols of the destination, really trying to figure out if they can even produce the event in their budget. So this phase is really important to show your audience that you have a deep understanding of what they want. And once you have all this understanding and you've built your strategy and design around your business outcomes and impressions that you've created, then you can hopefully build this excitement that we're talking about. We know that's not easy, so hopefully you've been doing some perspective taking, as we like to say, surveying, interviewing, observing, like we say, Susan, just really to inform you of what to do next. So more about the anticipating phase shortly. Susan, tell us about the arriving phase.
So as your guest arrives to the in-person event, it's going to look and feel a lot different these days. So you first want to make a great first impression of the event, and it's important to make that memorable. For an in-person event, that actually involves the travel to your event, which is often beyond your control and can be stressful. So it's important to focus on ways you can work with them to eliminate the stress once they reach the ground. For an online event, simplicity is often the most important, making it easy for people to understand how to navigate the website, how to build connections, and make meaningful engagements and network.
I agree, Susan. Simplicity is definitely key. So, setting the expectations up front is really a powerful way to share important information and respect the event guidelines, as we say, avoid disappointment. So thinking about your in-person event for a second, and because we've experienced so much behavioral changes over the last year and even into this year, and people's willingness to travel is completely still in a flux. So your guests might have said, yes, they're coming to the event, but they could change their mind at any time. So you want to make sure you're gathering this data to help you plan. And one tip you see on the screen here is, you might want to have an adoption curve based on your attendees' willingness to travel. You can have it really simply in these 4 categories: is those who are ready to travel, maybe they've traveled during COVID and want to be there. Those are open to travel. Maybe they feel ready, but they're a little bit hesitant. Those who might want to travel, they still need a little bit more proof that it's actually safe. And then, of course, lastly, those who are not willing to travel. So you want to make sure you're building excitement in the digital platform for those guests. And guests like to understand the whole event and what it's going to look like. So hopefully from the perspective taking, it's important to consider journey mapping. As you see on the screen here, we talked about it through our whole video series about journey mapping. But it's important, I think, from the time that they arrive to the time that they enter in the event, you kind of want to walk through that as a part of this whole anticipating phase. With this intel, you can include this information that informs guests about the environment and what they're going to experience throughout the event. You can really do this, Susan, we've talked about this, we can do this maybe in different order, because sometimes we might be thinking about engaging before we talk about the arriving or entering. So however that plan works for you guys is best. So once the idea is once you've showed the work that goes into the execution, that's, I think, going to help increase the trust and ease that anxiety. So we also want to think about behavioral science, of course. I know we've talked about this a lot. Of course, our design principles. And some of the design principles, just as some examples during the anticipating phase that you want to think about, expectations, autonomy, choice overload, teasing, and savoring. And just to give you an idea, just a couple of them, I'm not going to read all of them, but I think expectations, color judgment in ways that affect how people perceive experiences. So I would expect as a guest, the show organizer would have provided enough information about health and safety to help me relieve my stress and anxiety. So I think if your guests are going to think about it, you should make sure that you include it in your preparations and plan. Autonomy, giving those people the choice and having more control, I think increases enjoyment and satisfaction and their motivations. For example, with this, you might you might give your guests the opportunity to co-create a session. So perhaps they have access to pre-event content before we do that. I know we've talked about that with guests, with clients in preparation. And of course, choice overload, teasing, savoring are pretty self-explanatory. You don't want to give too much choices and overload, both with digital and in-person events. So things to think about as you're preparing and planning, going through these principles are just some good tips and guidelines to have. And then of course, as your guests look at the redesign of your event, that safety, security, and serenity are going to be top of mind. So it's going to be important that you share your guidelines, your preparedness, your prevention plans. You can ask yourself really some simple questions. I mean, how are you going to make your guests feel safe and out of danger? How can you give your guests more control? And how can you create a sense of calmness for your guests as we're getting back into these in-person events? You want to remind your guests of the event code of conduct. Make sure that it's prevalent, and safety is really going to be the utmost of importance. Another important key thing, I think, is developing communication plans and identifying specific measures so that all the partners involved in your whole entire event plan are taking and complying and mandating with safety measures. This is good to discuss through this whole anticipation phase, because guests are going to anticipate this and they're going to want to be aware. And another important thing is know before you go. Like we say, we want to eliminate disappointment. So during this time, I think it's going to be more important than ever before to discuss about know before you go. Doing videos, a really great way to do this. You can have visuals, infographic information. As we always say, that this is better than having too much words. Stuff for people to comprehend, and images are stronger than words. So you can work together with your facility, brand, health and safety to follow, have a maybe commentary so that your guests can actually know what they expect. One of our clients actually successfully did this in January for their first in-person event in 2021. This is a picture here of Orlando Convention Center and Orange County Convention Center, and their health and safety team worked and put together a video walking the guests through what to expect. Another example at the bottom of the screen there was actually my first in-person event last September with the Rocky Mountain chapter of Professional Convention Management Association. And they had in their Know Before You Go, they sent an email and just had a little infographic map showing where the health and safety check was, where the registration and steps I'm going to walk through, and kind of helped me just feel at ease in understanding how their protocols were going to be. And, don't forget about the anticipating phase in the digital event. The guest journey still matters, we say over and over in the digital event. So you want to build excitement around the online anticipating part, and help to set expectations and have maybe access to a piece of the platform before it goes live. That's something that people can get excited about. Susan, we have a lot of control in the anticipating phase, but now as we jump to the arriving phase, we sort of lose this control. So what happens in that arriving phase?
So in this phase, you're really looking to minimize their anxiety and any friction. That'll be the most important thing you can do when designing and thinking about your guests in this phase. As we mentioned before, the actual travel to the event is often out of your control and can be stressful. So we want to focus on what can be done to eliminate that. One step could be to put yourself in your attendee's shoes. Go through the exercise of arriving at the destination and getting from point A to point B, and more importantly, safely these days. What has changed throughout all those steps? What things can you do to anticipate their needs?
Absolutely.
Some examples we thought might be helpful. So really when arriving, the baggage claim area is kind of the first opportunity when the feet hit the ground. So perhaps add airport assistance or a strong presence in that area to help guide and navigate your guests in a secure manner when they arrive, and how they need to get from there to the event. Yurii, can you talk a little bit about something Denver's doing, for example?
Yeah, thanks, Susan. Yeah, specifically in Denver at the International Airport, they have a new experience, if you will. It's called Verifly. What that is really a free app, which allows people to feel a little bit more safe. It's basically a reservation system, allows access to dedicated TSA screening lanes and reserved limited capacity for the train and into the concourse. So this will help really relieve some anxiety. Is this a great example that you can utilize in your arriving phase?
We've got some other great examples. Maybe make signage available, as we mentioned, at the airport, and share that ahead of time. Traveling safely through Denver is an example. Work with your DMO on information that might be what's the new normal in the city or destination, and provide that to guests ahead of time. Share capacity information, particularly if state or cities still have limitations on restaurant and what is open. Your guests are going to want to know where they can eat. Think of practical real-life examples that you've experienced through the past year through various businesses and facilities, and how they've improved their safety measures. For example, what was a visit like to the doctor's office, the grocery store, the motor vehicle administration? Identifying those type of interactions that you've experienced, you can use that to design and prepare your guests for what to expect when they arrive. Being aware that in the arriving phase, again, stressful emotions are a major part of that phase. So knowing that and keeping it in mind, you can make better decisions when you're designing the next phase, entering.
There's definitely more to come on that in our next video. So thanks for joining us today.